Vacation is off. Expect a visit from our lawyer, Mom announced at the family reunion, loud enough for every cousin, aunt, and neighbor balancing paper plates to hear. The backyard went quiet for half a second, the kind of silence that carries more weight than shouting. Then came the whispers, all because I refused to co-sign a $13,000 loan for my brother. I was standing near the grill when she said it. The smell of burnt burgers hung in the warm air, and someone's kid was chasing a balloon across the lawn. My brother leaned against the patio railing with that same crooked smirk he'd worn when he first asked for the loan. Like my answer had already been decided. Family helps family, Mom added, folding her arms like a judge delivering a sentence. A few relatives glanced at me, waiting for me to argue, to defend myself. I didn't. I simply took a sip of my soda and nodded slowly. Because what none of them realized yet was that I had already read the loan documents. I've always been the quiet one in my family. Not weak, just quiet. The kind of person people assume will eventually give in if they push long enough. Growing up, my brother Ryan was the star of every family story. The funny one, the risk-taker, the one Mom called full of life. I was the responsible one, the kid who finished homework early, worked part-time in college, and paid my bills on time. In our house, responsibility wasn't celebrated. It was expected. Ryan, on the other hand, had a long trail of fresh starts. A failed car detailing business, a gym membership scheme that somehow ended with unpaid rent, a credit card disaster Mom once described as a misunderstanding. Each time, the family gathered around him like he was the victim of bad luck. And each time, someone else quietly cleaned up the mess. Usually me. I had co-signed a small loan for him once before, years ago. When he missed payments, the bank didn't call him, they called me. I spent 12 months fixing a mistake that wasn't mine. No one apologized. Mom simply said, "You're better with money anyway." So when Ryan slid those new loan papers across the table last week, smiling like this was just another favor, I already knew exactly how the story usually ended. But this time, I wasn't planning to play my usual role. After Mom's announcement, the reunion slowly drifted back into forced normalcy. Paper plates rustled, someone turned the music up again, and my cousin started another volleyball game in the yard, but the glances kept coming. Aunt Linda leaned toward Mom near the drink table, whispering just loud enough for me to catch a few words. "Over 13,000? That's not even that much for family." Mom sighed heavily, the kind of sigh meant to travel across a backyard. "I guess some people just forget who helped them growing up." I felt a few eyes shift toward me again. Ryan strolled past with a soda in his hand and stopped beside my chair. He didn't look angry. If anything, he looked amused. "Relax," he said quietly, tapping the side of my chair with 2 fingers. "Mom's just trying to make a point." A pause. "You could still fix this, you know." Across the yard, Mom was already telling another relative the story. Each time she repeated it, the numbers sounded bigger, the refusal colder. What struck me most wasn't the criticism, it was the certainty, the calm assumption that eventually I would cave like I always had. They thought pressure worked on me. What they didn't know was that I had spent the entire week looking much deeper than they expected. Later that evening, the reunion started thinning out. Folding chairs scraped against the patio. Leftover food was packed into containers, and the loud conversations faded into smaller, tired voices. Ryan approached me again while I was stacking empty cups near the trash bin. "Look," he said, lowering his voice. "The bank just needs someone with decent credit. It's temporary. 6 months, maybe a year." He slid the folder toward me again like it was a routine formality. I didn't open it this time. I had already done that days earlier, alone at my kitchen table, under a quiet lamp reading every page carefully. What I found wasn't just a loan. It was a consolidation agreement tied to multiple existing debts. Old credit cards, missed payments, penalties stacking quietly in the background. If Ryan defaulted, and his history suggested the bank wouldn't just chase him. They'd come straight to me. And there was something else buried in the fine print. A clause that would allow the lender to pursue all co-signers equally in case of legal recovery. Mom hadn't just encouraged this. She had already volunteered herself as the secondary guarantor. Standing there beside the trash bin, watching Ryan wait for my answer. Something finally settled inside me. For the first time in years, I realized something simple. I didn't need to argue. I just needed to step aside and let the truth unfold. That night, after the reunion, I went home and opened the folder again. Not with anger, just with patience. Numbers tell stories if you're willing to read them carefully, and numbers had always been my language. I work in financial compliance for a regional firm, which basically means my job is spotting risks hidden. Inside paperwork people rarely read. Ryan had assumed I'd glance at the first page, see the monthly payment, and sign like before. Instead, I reviewed every clause. Then I ran a simple background check on the lender. The company offering the loan wasn't a traditional bank. It was a private lending group that specialized in high-risk borrowers. Their contracts were technically legal, but aggressively structured, heavy penalties, fast escalation to collections, and immediate action against cosigners. Exactly the kind of deal someone desperate might accept without thinking twice. I didn't call Ryan. I didn't confront Mom. Instead, I sent a short, polite email to the loan officer requesting clarification about the guarantor terms. I asked a few very specific questions, ones that required written answers. Within 2 days, they replied with a detailed explanation of the liability structure. Clear, unmistakable. I saved every message, printed the documents, and quietly forwarded copies to one more person listed on the contract. Mom. 2 days later, Mom called. Not her usual cheerful ringtone greeting. Just silence for a moment after I picked up. Then quietly, "What exactly did you send me?" I could almost picture her sitting at the kitchen table. The printed pages spread out in front of her, the same way I had read them days earlier. I just forwarded the lender's explanation, I said calmly. Figured you should see the full terms, since you're listed as the secondary guarantor. Another pause, longer this time. In the background, I heard papers shifting. A chair scraping the floor. Someone, probably Ryan, asking from across the room what was going on. Mom didn't answer him. When she spoke again, the confidence from the reunion was gone. They said, they can pursue both guarantors immediately if he misses payments. Yes, I replied. That's what the clause means. More silence, heavy now. For the first time, she wasn't talking to an audience. There were no cousins watching, no relatives to impress. Just the reality of the numbers in front of her. Across the line, Ryan finally grabbed the phone. Why would you send her that? He snapped. I leaned back in my chair, watching the evening light fade through my window. I didn't do anything, I said quietly. I just made sure everyone read the same contract. The next family gathering felt different. No announcements, no speeches across the backyard. Just quieter conversations and the occasional glance in my direction. Ryan never brought the loan papers again. A week after Mom read the contract, the lender withdrew the offer when they couldn't secure a willing co-signer. Apparently, even Ryan wasn't ready to carry the full weight of that agreement alone. Mom stopped mentioning lawyers. Instead, she called me one evening and spoke carefully, like someone stepping across thin ice. I didn't realize the terms were that aggressive, she admitted. I didn't say I told you so. I didn't need to. Word had already spread through the family anyway. Not as gossip, more like a slow correction of the story. People who once thought I was being selfish now understood what the loan actually meant. Aunt Linda even pulled me aside at the next barbecue. Smart move, she said quietly. But the biggest shift wasn't in their reactions. It was in how they approached me afterward. The casual pressure was gone. The expectation that I'd quietly fix other people's problems had disappeared. And that mattered more than the loan ever did. Because sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't hurting anyone. It's simply refusing to carry a burden that was never yours. In the weeks that followed, the noise around the situation slowly faded. Family dinners returned to normal rhythms, plates clinking, quiet laughter, small conversations drifting across the table. Ryan stopped bringing up money around me. Mom stopped making public speeches about family responsibility. Something subtle had shifted. For years, I had believed my role in the family was to absorb pressure quietly, to smooth over problems, sign papers, and carry consequences no one else wanted. I thought keeping the peace meant sacrificing a little more each time. But peace built on silence isn't really peace. It's permission. Refusing that loan didn't just protect my credit score or my bank account. It changed how people saw me, and more importantly, how I saw myself. Ryan eventually found a smaller job and started paying down some of his debts on his own. Mom became more careful before asking for favors. And me? I didn't become louder. I didn't need to. I just learned the power of a calm boundary. Because sometimes the strongest move in a family conflict isn't revenge, anger, or confrontation. Sometimes it's simply this. You read the contract, and you choose not to sign it.